Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Dan Morey from the National Independent Staffing Association and Staffing Monthly. I wanted to take a moment just to talk about some of the headwinds that we are moving into as it relates to the selling environment for staffing as we move into 2024. I know that some of you have already felt this sort of resistance or the headwinds of sales challenges coming out of 2023. However, when I was looking at some of the most recent data put out there by the staffing industry analysts, and specifically their pulse reports, I wanted to draw your attention to a couple of key things as it relates to sales, and maybe give you some insights in how to best prepare yourself or your people for the tough selling environment that is up ahead. So first, I just want to take a look at this report. So this is actually the Staffing Industry Analysts Pulse Survey from November 2023 that actually shows you essentially the last decade of sentiment as sales versus recruiting difficulty. Okay. This is taking a look at this, and they survey a whole bunch of staffing professionals, and they're really just getting their sentiment about how they feel about how difficult it is to sell versus recruit, right? And then they plot this on there. And the point I want to make is that for the last decade, and if you could actually went back a little bit further, it probably was a little bit beyond that, it has been perceived to be harder to recruit than it has been to sell in this industry, with the exception being during the pandemic. Obviously, we all know that during the kind of the throes of the pandemic in 2020, there was really an 8 to 10 month period there where it was really, really, really hard to sell. And that's where you could actually see this spike, which is what I want to kind of zero in on here as we're looking at this. You can see that during that period, it was really, really hard to sell. It was a little bit easier to recruit. However, something just happened in the middle point of the year, and it's starting to widen. It is actually becoming harder to sell than it is recruit based on the actual sentiment of your peers of the staffing industry responding to the Pulse survey. And this is only going to continue to widen as we move through 2024. And it's actually expected to be the long-term trend going forward, to where the difficulty in selling is actually going to be harder than recruiting. So if that's the case, if you are a leader of an organization or a sales leader or even a sales professional, you have to be wondering, how are you going to hit your goals? How are you going to grow your revenue, right? And a lot of times people will see this and they'll think that the reason that it's harder to sell is because the market is just hardening. If you go back to the Great Recession of 08, 09, back to one of the last significant times where it was harder to sell than recruit. It was during those times, unemployment was really, really high. Companies weren't adding the jobs, month over month like they are today. So this is a different type of reluctance. This is a different type of headwind that we're facing, because even if you look at right now, at the end of 2023, the national unemployment rate was 3.7. Anything below 4% is basically considered rock bottom. Like, it really doesn't get more optimal than where we're at, right? This is about as low as it's going to get. So the available workforce is they're there, they're working, they're placed, right? So now recruiting is going to have to be moving people from one job to another job, more so than it ever has been. And in addition to such a low unemployment rate, the country has been adding, on average 200,000 jobs a month for the last all year, all of 2023, maybe even a little bit higher than that. So if you think about that, we're not in a situation where employers don't need talent. We're not in a situation where our clients, our customers, don't have demand. The demand is there, and the supply is not matching the demand. We still have nearly 10 million unfilled jobs in this country. So when you think about the fact that there is such a low unemployment rate, there's a massive gap between of unfilled jobs, and they're still steadily adding new jobs every single month in the clip of 200,000, adding to that gap. What we have is a market that is ripe for selling staffing, yet it seems to be harder and harder. Why is that? Why do you think it's harder to sell today when the demand is probably at an all-time high? I'll tell you, the main reason why is because there are still legitimate concerns about a recession. There are still legitimate concerns about economic volatility, right? However, the demand is there. That doesn't change the fact that they still need the people. What it changes is companies' mindset for spending money. And if they look at spending money on staffing as an expense, it's going to get cut. However, if they look at spending money on staffing and recruiting as an investment necessary to their growth and a valuable service, it won't. It'll get prioritized, right? So what's happened here? If you think about coming off the pandemic not that long ago, when it was actually much harder to sell, and then it kind of came back down, it was becoming easier to sell. The reason why is there was a lot of price competitiveness. There was a lot of commoditization. And I know we've been commoditizing ourselves for a long period of time, but it got even worse going through the pandemic because everybody overreacted. Everyone started, dropping their price and doing all of, these kind of price competition games. And what happened is it devalued the service of the industry. Okay. So we got into this mindset to where we were essentially racing to the bottom, trying to capture business because we had the scarcity mindset and we were reducing our price just to try to get business in the door to be able to hit our growth goals, right? And that's sort of natural to think that way. However, to be counterintuitive, you have to think about it the opposite way because the entire market did that, which is why you see that kind of that downward trend, why sales got easier and easier and then started getting harder because the market sort of bottomed out as far as pricing goes, right? And the only way that you can actually sell at a lower price is if you actually offer a lower price, but I feel like everyone kind of took their prices down to the floor. Now, the main reason that we need to look at this is when you're attacking the market this way, when you are focused on just kind of competing on price, you're essentially commoditizing yourself. And there is no strategic advantage to being the second low-priced service provider. There just isn't, right? And when everyone's doing that, they're sort of racing to the bottom. So if we want to break the cycle of commoditization and actually go out and capture this business, we have to sell based on value. And here's why. It's not that the companies don't have the money to invest in staffing and recruiting, and it's not that they don't have the demand. What they don't have is the belief that it's worth it. And the reason that they don't believe that the staffing services are worth it is because most companies that they've talked to and most that they've worked with have actually commoditized themselves based on not differentiating themselves at all and actually providing a lackluster service, right? And there's a couple reasons in here that I want to talk about in the next few minutes. But before I do that, I want to talk about what actually happens when you decrease your price. When you compete on price, I want to walk you through the psychological process of what you're actually doing and then show you the physical, tangible, negative impact that it actually has on you, your employees, and your customers, okay? When you cut your price, when you want to be the lowest price provider and you drop your price in order to compete to get business, you actually decrease your client's emotional investment because you don't cost that much, right? Because you actually are not a premium product. So like they're looking at you like a commodity and nobody gets super excited about a commodity, right? So when you decrease your price, you're actually decreasing your client's emotional investment in the service itself, which means it's going to be a strained or weakened relationship that's going to be subject to higher scrutiny because you're a commodity, which means you're interchangeable, you're replaceable, right? So that's the first thing that happens when you decrease your price, okay? The second thing is you actually decrease your client's perceived value of your service because you're now cheap or you cost the same as kind of the market. So now you're kind of commodity pricing. And if they feel like you're a commodity, you're basically decreasing their perceived value of your service. Okay, so they're going to think less of you. Again, strained relationship, replaceable, all that kind of stuff, which is never a good spot to be in with your clients, right? So the next thing that you do when you decrease your price is you actually decrease the results that your clients get from your service because they're not as invested in you, right? They won't respond to you quickly. They won't give you client feedback, candidate feedback the way that they should. They're not as invested or as engaged in the actual process as you need them to be to get the positive results. So if you've ever felt like you're having a hard time getting candidate feedback or you're having a hard time, the responses are just taking longer and longer, that's an indicator that your clients don't value the service that you're providing to them, right? And a lot of times that actually comes just because you priced at a commodity price point, right? So you have diminished their perceived value, right? And that's a major issue, right? The next thing that you actually do when you actually focus on decreased pricing is you attract the worst clients. You actually attract the type of clients that you really don't want to do business with. These are the ones that are just never satisfied. They literally want the world for a penny, right? Like that, they will keep hounding you and complaining and never being satisfied, even if your service was free, right? Like this just you just attract those kind of clients when you kind of decrease your prices, and you just can't do that. Another issue that comes along with actually decreasing your prices, and this gets to the tangible negative impact, is once you decrease your prices, you decrease your margin, which means you no longer have the money that you need to provide an exceptional experience and service for your clients. You don't have enough money to actually hire the best people in your industry and pay them appropriately. You don't have the money to invest in training and development, growth, and growing your company. You're literally trying to squeeze the proverbial blood out of a stone, and there's just not enough money left at the end of the day. And it creates a terrible experience for your clients, a terrible experience for your employees, and it's just going to be a race to the bottom for you and your company. And you're going to be left kind of fighting for the scraps of all this commodity market pricing that's taking place, right? So I'm here to tell you, like, there is a way out of it, and if you've actually gone through my value selling session, negotiation sessions, you've seen that it doesn't take that much of a price markup, that much of a premium price to literally double the margin that you're actually getting, which means you can have the work that you need to do in order to hit your goals. And when you're facing in a market like we are today, when there's such a low supply of talent and a high demand, we need to focus on actually being able to make as much money as possible with as little talent as possible, right? And that's actually done through premium pricing, not commodity pricing. With commodity pricing, you need to place a whole lot of people in order to make the money. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of people to do it. And now the clients that want to pay commodity pricing, they're just not as willing. They're reluctant because they don't see the value anymore. So we sort of did this to ourselves. So this is where I want to talk to you about some of the sessions that are actually coming up at the Staffing Sales Summit and what you can get from it if you choose to go. That's up to you. This is not a pitch to go to that event. I just want to talk about the agenda items that are coming up and how you can use the content from these sessions to be best prepared to face the sales market of 2024 and these headwinds that we're running into, right? So obviously the first session with Tom Erb is going to be sales mindset. Mindset is everything. How you approach the market, how you carry yourselves, the vernacular that you have, how you talk to clients, it all starts with your mindset. And if you have the right mindset to frame your approach for success, you're more likely to be successful, right? And Tom is going to start the entire 2-day sales summit off focusing on that, just getting our mindset right to be prepared to learn all of the other techniques so we can leave the summit and use these techniques to grow and hit our goals and sell based on value and actually educate our clients to why our service is worth it and what they actually get out of it, so they see it as a value investment versus an expense that they need to cut. Okay, so next one, obviously we have Kim Henderson talking about how to sell SOW services, statement of work services. This is incredibly timely. If you're not familiar with statement of work or SOW, this is one of the fastest growing subsets in the staffing industry. And this happens off rate card. If you actually work with a lot of VMSs, MSPs, things like that, and you feel like you're kind of boxed in, or maybe you can't break in because they already have approved vendors and they're not onboarding anybody new, right? SOW service is the answer. You can still sell to those companies and sell them on a project basis and actually get your contractors, your temps, your associates into that client on a statement of work, right? So if you want to focus on growing and getting new clients or actually even expanding business with your existing clients, the only two ways to grow, expanding your SOW business is a great way to attack 2024, especially when you think about the buyer's perspective, thinking about the fact that they want to get value out of it. They don't want these long-term expense commitments. They got to manage contracts, got to manage spend. They're kind of tightening the belt a little bit. So project-based work, SOW-based work is a way that they're tackling that. So this is kind of meeting the clients where they're at and meeting them on a project-based or a statement of work-based project to get your contractors in there and grow your business, right? Now, we also have John Rutten from Aviante talking about how to sell staffing services. He's laying out the framework needed to sell staffing services today in 2024 based on the headwinds that we're facing. And John has been incredibly successful in selling staffing services in his career before moving to Aviante, right? He knows what it takes, and he's going to be teaching you how to sell and go get new customers, right? So if you feel like getting new customers is the answer to your growth goal and facing these headwinds, like learn from John. Like he's going to teach you the way to do it more efficiently, right? So you can be more successful. Now, we also have one of my favorite topics that I think is underutilized in our industry. We've got Jeff Stotts coming in talking about sales funnels, right? This industry, for better or worse, tends to be a laggard with some of the modern themes out there, one of which is marketing and sales integration and actually using marketing to drive leads into a sales funnel to nurture them and warm up these leads before your salespeople even make contact with them, increasing the chance for a sale. So if you actually learn how to build and deploy a sales funnel the right way, you're going to be attracting the better clients, warming them up before your salespeople even engage with them, increasing the chances of closing them based on value, not on price, earning more money on those clients, right? Just using digital tools. And Jeff's going to teach us all about that side of it. So that's going to help you grow that piece. And it's going to be another tool that you can run inefficiently. It's just software, right? It's just technology. So it's got a low cost, high return. And as we're navigating these kind of tougher selling times, like those are the tools that we need to be thinking about deploying, right? Lower cost, higher return. We're going to lead off day 2 with Rob Geist from Simple VMS. And he has surveyed all of the users of VMS services that actually use hundreds and hundreds of staffing services. And he's asked them, what is it that they're actually willing to pay for? What are they buying when they work with us? And I will tell you, if you've not heard my story in this industry, when I first got into this and I was introduced to the staffing industry by my business partner, Francis Freeman, I didn't even know anything about the staffing industry. I was literally I could not have been more opposite for staffing sales than I was at that moment. And I had no clue. I literally went out and I asked 25 prospects what they wanted from a staffing agency. That was it. I literally called out all these companies. I'm like, hey, would you come in? Would you invite me in and let me ask you one question? And they were like, morbid curiosity. They're like, well, what is that question? I was like, you got to invite me in. So again, they would invite me in and be like, hey, what is it that you really want out of a staffing agency? And I would take all of these notes. And at the end of it, like there was 25 different answers. And I was like, how do I be everything to everyone? And then when I laid it out, the picture was clear about how we needed to build a company that allowed us to scale tremendously in the top 2% of staffing agencies in the country, especially being independently owned. You know, when you do that, we realized I was just listening to the customer. And a lot of times we actually forget to do that. We forget to go back and just ask our customers or our prospects, what do they need us to do for them, right? Because after a while, you get a level of expertise, you feel good, you're an expert in your industry and you know how to provide the service. But sometimes we just forget to keep going back and asking the customer. It's called voice of the customer or customer discovery, depending on what school of thought you're from. Either way, Rob from Simple VMS is actually going to teach us what the customers are saying today that they find valuable and what they're willing to pay for from staffing partners and what they're not. And this is going to help you not only craft your messaging and your marketing, but your sales pitch and your value proposition to differentiate yourself so you can sell based on value. Can you imagine what it would be like, what your sales pitch would sound like, and how your customers would receive it if you actually walked into the meeting and you had intimate knowledge about what their challenges were and the value that they actually get out of staffing services? Can you see how that would sound and feel different and how that would differentiate you and you would come off as an expert? And that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to teach you how to do those things with that session. Obviously, I'm on the agenda with my value selling. It's just basically, it's exactly that. It's showing you how to sell based on value versus selling on price. And if you feel like you've struggled with competing on price, or maybe you're not quite sure how to differentiate your agency so you stand out, and you're not quite sure how you can actually get a little bit better of a markup or bill rate, like that's the session for you. I'm going to teach you like how to do those things, right? And a lot of it is just coming down to understanding, you know, what is the real value that you provide to the agents or to your clients, not necessarily the service you're providing. What I mean by it is what do your people do for your client? And what value does that work product give to your client? So if you're in light industrial staffing, right, and you're sending material handlers, like what is the value of 20 material handlers getting widgets out of the warehouse? Like what is the actual value of that to the client? And what is the value in comparison to that actually not happening if they didn't have those 20 people? Like what would that look like, right? And that's the value. The gain that they get out of the service that they pay from is the value. And we talk all about that and how to differentiate yourself. Then we talk about sales management topics from Mark Winter, talking about how do you actually hire and onboard salespeople the right way? How do you build a strategic sales plan so you can deploy those salespeople to be effective, right? Butler Street was on stage at SIA Exec Forum last year, and they talked about how less than 25% of salespeople hit their sales goals. Well, I think that we can see from some of the recent playoff failures that a lot of times it's not the actual producer's fault, it's the coach's fault. And if sales managers don't know how to put together the right game plan for their salespeople to be successful in the environment that they're going into, it makes sense as to why 75% or more of salespeople actually fail to hit their goals, right? So if you want to see how to change that, like look at your sales management and your plan. We're also going to be talking about, and these are some of my two favorite sessions. They're actually the afternoon of day two. We actually have Robert Reed from Butler Street, who I was just talking about how to negotiate your way through the toughest objections, right? So if you're looking at this sales summit and you're like, man, it's expensive, and you're right, this is a premium event. There's a lot of knowledge. There's a lot of talent that's going to be taking the stage, teaching people how to do this. But if you could just take one nugget just from Robert Reed's session from Butler Street about negotiating your way through the toughest objections and get just one more client that you wouldn't have gotten, you're likely to have massive ROI from it. Or if you just learn how to negotiate rate increases and you can actually just increase your overall, markup by 1%, I mean, that's a $10,000 revenue gain for every $1 million of payroll you do, right? So massive ROI, just learning these one or two little nuggets from this event that you can actually get. So if you're looking at it as an expense, you're naturally going to be reluctant to not want to spend the money. But if you see it as an investment, then you'll understand how you actually can get the value out of it, right? And then the last one, again, if you're going to grow, there's only two ways to do it. You got to get more clients, or you got to get more business from the clients you have. Tom Erb is going to be closing us out with his renowned workshop on maximizing existing clients. How do you actually grow your existing clients vertically and expand horizontally throughout these clients and strengthen these relationships to grow your business? So just kind of to sum up is, we're heading into a massive headwind, and we're going to face significant resistance when it comes to selling staffing services. And it is not because there is not a need for our service. There's not because there is not a demand for it. There is demand. There is low supply. Our pricing over the last year has not reflected that. We've been out of balance by commoditizing our pricing because we've failed to differentiate ourselves, and we've failed to truly understand the value that we provide to our clients, and we've not priced it accordingly. So now these companies are actually heading into economically uncertain times. So they're being a little bit more wise in their spending, and they need to justify it based on value. They have to say, hey, what is the value we get out of partnering with these staffing agencies? And if your salespeople don't know how to sell based on value, you're going to really struggle to get your new business, or to grow your existing clients, or to not compete on price. So again, I would encourage you to go to the Staffing Sales Summit. It is going to be an amazing, amazing event. However, I understand it's not for everybody. I do understand that it is a premium event. If you're looking at this and you can figure out how to send one person, this is how I would tell you to maximize it. This is a great strategy, just to provide a little bit of value in this video here. A great strategy to do is to send that person, have them take notes, and then literally set them up to do a lunch and learn. Tell them, say, hey, you need to pick the three most powerful nuggets that we can implement in our business immediately, and then set up a lunch and learn each week when they get back to the office to teach the rest of the team, right? And then teach the others how to do this. And that's how you can get this information into your entire organization. So with that, I hope that you recognize these trends, and I hope that you're now aware, and this information can help you make better decisions about how to tackle the more difficult selling environment that we're heading into, so you can be successful in 2024. And if you'd like to take that next step, I would love to see you at the Staffing Sales Summit in February.